In this high dynamic range project, I'm going to open up 3 files that I've captured in Paris. Okay, the files are bracketed. Here we have one shot that's one stop overexposed. This one is the normal or meter as red exposure, and then we have one which is one stop underexposed. And the reason for this is I wanted one exposure to capture the best of the highlight information, and I wanted another exposure to capture the best of the shadow information in the scene. Now, because these images are handheld, we can't get perfect alignment, and this is where Photoshop comes in. We can simply come to the File menu, come down to Scripts, and choose Load Files into Stack. Okay, now the files are already open, so I'll just click on the Add Open Files. You can alternatively browse to the files in a particular folder. Okay, now we also have an option here called Attempt to automatically align source images, and so this is exactly what I'm using this for. So I'll click on that checkbox, and now we'll select OK. And Photoshop will place all 3 of the images into one file, and as you can see, it's aligning the selected layers. Now, the auto align feature inside of Photoshop is an excellent feature, and it usually gets it right almost every time. We can just drop the opacity on this top layer to see that although the people might be moving, the buildings and edges of the details are all locked into alignment. Okay, now because we have aligned these images and they are handheld, some of the edges will not line up, so we've got a little bit of transparency sitting at these edges. So we just need to come to the crop tool and then just drag that crop tool in just to recrop and make sure we don't have any transparency sitting at the edges of this file. Okay, I've got the delete crop pixels unchecked, so we could fine-tune this later if required. I'll just click the commit crop operation. Okay, so now we have the 3 layers stacked. I'm actually going to export them as separate files, and again there's a script that enables us to do this. I'll come to the File menu once again, down to Scripts, and then choose Export Layers to Files. Okay, inside of this little dialog we've got the option of choosing where we want the files to be placed. Here I'm just choosing my desktop. I'm going to give these files a prefix. Okay, they're going to be called aligned, and this will differentiate them from the original images. And we can also choose a file type. I've started with TIFF files, so I'm going to end up with TIFF files as well. Okay, and I'll just run this script, and Photoshop will busily work away exporting each layer as a separate file, and they've been placed onto my desktops, and here I have confirmation that the export was successful, so I'll click OK. Okay, now that we've finished with these open images, I'm actually going to merge the exposures in another piece of software. We could use Merge to HDR Pro, but I want to show you a viable alternative to this, and it uses a piece of Donate software. For a very small fee you can unlock the features of the software. First, however, I'll just come up to the File menu and choose Close All, and I don't want to save any of them. Okay, let's switch over into the new software. I'll just Command Tab on my Mac to cycle through, and it's Infuse GUI, which is already open. Now the GUI interface for the Infuse may look quite scary, but you'll see this is a very simple operation. As I said, those aligned images have been placed on my desktop, so I'll just collect those images and drag them in to this little window here, and automatically we can see we have the aligned versions captured. Okay, now if we want to preview what this software is about to do, I just need to click on the preview button, and a little window will open up and show me how Infuse GUI has merged the separate exposures to create one single file, hopefully with optimized highlights and shadows. It's looking very good. We've got a little bit of ghosting from the moving subjects, but that is only to be expected. There is no deghost feature inside of Infuse GUI, unlike Merged HDR Pro, but there is a workaround for this, and this is one of the features of this current tutorial, is to show how we can work around deghosting an image. Okay, now we have lots of options here and we can actually make some changes here. A lot of the options don't actually make a whole heap of difference, and Infused GUI tends to get it right pretty much 90% of the time, so there isn't much need to actually make any of the adjustments here. If you did want to play with these controls, just click on the new preset here and then make some adjustments. Perhaps one of the adjustments that does make a visible difference is this Force Hard Blend Masks option here. So I'll uncheck that and just preview that a second time. And now we have this new preview, and I can cycle backwards and forwards between the older preview. The hard edge or the hard blend masks just creates a slightly more localized contrast. I'm actually going to go perhaps for the option that doesn't use the Force Hard Blend Masks here, and then I'll choose to infuse it, and this again will be placed onto the desktop, and I can choose to export as either a TIFF or a JPEG here, and I'll just hit infuse it, and we get this beautiful little bouncing ball just to tell me it's underway and processing, and this will be placed inside a folder on my desktop. Okay, the little bouncing ball has stopped, so I know that is ready to go now. So again, I'll just switch back to Photoshop. I'll just cycle through and choose my Photoshop CS6 software. I have the folder on my desktop, so I'll just open that, and here I can see the aligned image inside the infused folder, and it even tells me which files it's been aligning there, and I'll just drag that into the Photoshop window to open the aligned version. Okay, so as expected, we've got pretty much good shadow quality and good highlight quality. We do have that ghosting. I'm just going to check Infuse has done a good job of the highlights here, which is one of the Achilles heels of a lot of HDR software. It still does clip some of the brightest highlights, even though we may have an exposure that has recorded that detail. So I'm just going to bring in a levels adjustment layer just to check. And as you can see, we've got very good shadow detail, no clipping in the shadows there. But if I just hold down the Alt or Option key and click on that input white slider, we'll see that we've lost the brightest white walls catching the sunlight there. Now there is a workaround for this, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the darkest exposure, which was aligned by Photoshop, and drag that in and place it above the background layer. And if we come to my layers panel, I can just slide, we'll just commit that placement first, and then I'll just slide that levels adjustment to the top there. Now if I open that levels adjustment, you'll see that although there was clipping in this one, we do actually have the highlight information that we were looking for in this particular file. So how do we get the best of both worlds, the infused one and the highlights from this image? Let's just take a look at that. We can just double click on the darker exposure layer here, and this opens up the blending options. And if we turn our attention to the blend if ramp here, I can grab that black slider on the top ramp and drag it up to a value of around about 200 or so. And what this does is it makes the darker pixels where there is some clipping on this layer transparent. And in order to create a subtle transition, I just need to hold down the Alt key on a PC or the Option key on a Mac and split this slider so we can move up to a value of around about 245 or so. And once that has been achieved, I can just select OK. Now, it's often a little bit difficult to the first time you use these blend if sliders to actually work out what is going on. But the proof of what has just happened is actually in that levels again. You can see we've managed to restore the highlights, and we have the best of the shadows from the underlying layer. Let's just return to that layers panel. What I'm going to do, just to show you what has happened here, is I'm just going to select this darker layer, and I'm going to hold down the Command key on a Mac or the Control key on a PC and click on that new layer icon, and I'm going to fill it with the foreground color, which is black. I'll just press D to get that foreground color, and then I'll hold down the Alt key on a PC or the Option key on a Mac and hit the Delete or Backspace key, and this actually fills this layer with black, so we can actually now see what is on the top layer, and that is just the brightest highlights, or the information is being fed to the underlying layer, which is down below there. Okay, let's just throw that layer away. We can also throw the levels check away, and I can now flatten this file. So I'll just choose flatten image, and now we have that best of both worlds, good shadows, good midtones, and good highlights. But we still have this ghosting in the image, and that's what I want to turn my attention to next. Again, I'm going to take the middle exposure, which has been aligned from the desktop, and place it above this background layer. Okay, now this one has clipping in the shadows and highlights, but it does have the best of the movement that is in the center of this image. I'll just hit the commit place. Okay, and we can check for alignment before we freeze the action here. I'm just going to set the blend mode temporarily to the difference blend mode, and I'm going to zoom in. Let's just zoom in a couple of times here. And you'll see that there is some ghosting from this motion here, but all of the areas that is aligned is pretty much pitch black here. If we don't have perfect alignment, I'll just select the Move tool by pressing the V key. If we don't have perfect alignment, you might find that your image looks a little bit like this. Okay, and all we need to do is nudge it into alignment using the arrow keys on the keyboard, and until the only areas that we can see with white halos is the area with motion. I'll just put this back to the normal blend mode, and we're now ready to freeze this motion from this layer and place it on the infused version below. Okay, so I'm going to rasterize this layer. I'm just going to right click. I don't need it as a smart object now that we have perfect alignment and scale, so I'll just click rasterize layer. And then I'm going to choose the rectangular marquee tool, and in the feather field I've got 0 pixels selected, and I'm just going to select the area where we do have movement in this image. Okay, like so. And then I'm going to click on the add layer mask icon, which adds a mask. Okay, so we have the frozen motion, and masked is the clipping on this layer. Let's just zoom out so you can see. But what we do have is we have that area or band that hasn't been blended or merged into the surrounding area. Okay, so we're going to try and work out how we can actually now blend this in. Okay, so just hold down the Alt key on a PC or the Option key on a Mac, and we'll drag this to the layer underneath. But first we'll just need to double click that to convert it into an unlocked layer, and then, as I said, with that layer mask, hold down the Alt key or the Option key on a Mac and drag that to the layer below, and then click on the mask on the layer below and do the invert command, which is Command I on a Mac or Control I on a PC. Okay, so what we've done is we've shielded the area with the ghosting on the underlying layer, and we have the frozen area just visible from this masked area on the top layer. Now with this bottom layer mask selected, we just need to create a little bit of an overlap before we blend these two layers. So to do that, we're going to come to the Filter menu, Other, and choose Maximum. And we're just going to enter in a value of 10 pixels in the radius there, and this will just create a 10 pixel overlap between the masks on both of these layers. Okay, and I'll select OK. And then holding down the Command key on a Mac or Control key on a PC, I'll select the top layer so that both layers are selected, and then from the Edit menu choose Auto Blend Layers, and just the panorama option is fine, and we'll select OK. And Photoshop now will try and create a seamless transition between the two exposures on both layers, and it's done a remarkable job. So now if I just zoom out, you can see that we have an image with full tonal, we have full detail in both the highlights and shadows, and we've also managed to freeze the ghosting inside the center image. And the beauty of this is it does provide a reliable alternative to the merge to HDR feature inside of Photoshop CS6 for creating high dynamic range images.